What's up, 10 Skill Squad? How you doing? Today we are going to be talking about Arrma Mega Vehicles and an essential upgrade you need to do to these in order to support a brushless system. So these are a couple of my Arrma Mega Vehicles right here. We have, of course, the Typhon and the Granite Grafin cast. If you remember from the video, I'll put a link over here. This thing actually started out as an Arrma Typhon, and then we put some granite bits on it, sprinkled a little Big Rock and Outcast on it, and we got this, the Grafin cast. Now, the Arrma Mega Vehicles come brushed from the factory, and they're a great way to get into the hobby, a great way to get into the Arrma brand, but after a while, you're going to want to put a brushless system in these things. And when you do, there are a couple upgrades you need to consider before you put a brushless system in it, just so it'll handle the power. We ran this thing briefly with the Hobby Wing Max 10 combo in it. And, of course, we completely destroyed the input shaft. Now, having these big chungus wheels and tires definitely didn't help anything, but the input shafts on these things are plastic, and if you plan on putting a brushless system in it, it's only a matter of time before those plastic shafts let go. So we've got some metal ones right here, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to rip out the stock input shafts. The rear one is actually broken already, and we're going to replace it with this. While we're in there, we're going to check on the grease and the diffs. We're going to make sure those are good and greased, and then we're going to put some more reasonably sized tires on this thing, because these big chungus wheels, they're just too much for it. So let's get started. I'm going to rip the wheels and tires off, and then we'll take it apart. And these things are really super easy to work on. So if you're just getting into the hobby and you're kind of new to the Arrma line, these things are really, really beginner friendly. Let's check it out. All right, so now that that's done, the next step is going to be to remove the motor and drive shaft. And removing the drive shaft is super easy on this. These are spring loaded, so you basically just go like that, pull that thing out, and boom, drive shaft is out. Now, to remove the motor, there is one screw on the bottom, this one here, and then once we take that out, we are going to move this strap mount here, and then the whole motor and motor plate, the whole thing is going to just snap out. Super easy. Let's do it. And it helps if you have a set of drivers like this, because using Allen wrenches, this can kind of be tough on your fingers after a little bit. We should see this thing will just slide right on over. It's easier if there's a strap in here. Boom, that's that. And now we're gonna lift right here where it says pull, and the whole thing is gonna slide forward and pop right out. Bam, there it is. So here's our whole motor assembly, and there we can see the culprit. That is the sheared off part of a input shaft. So we're gonna have to get that out and replace where it actually ties into the diff. But before we do that, I'm going to remove the motor fan. I'm going to unplug the motor, and then I'm going to disconnect the temperature sensor on the motor. Boom, that'll make it a lot easier to work on. So you may be thinking, how are we gonna get that out? Well, we're gonna take a screw, we're gonna run a little screw in there, and then we'll have something to hold on to pop that out. All right, so we got our little screw threaded in there, and now we should be able to just grab a hold of it and pull it out, just like that. There is part of our broken input shaft. Now we're gonna have to remove a bunch of this rear assembly here to get down to the diff. That's kind of a boring procedure, so I'm just gonna speed it up, show you the important parts, and we'll get to it. And that's basically the whole rear bulkhead removed. And here we can see our diff. We're just gonna grab it, pull it straight down, and pull our drive shafts apart. There's the rear diff. But you'll see that we still have a little bit more work to do. We actually have to split the diff now. And that's just a couple of screws to take that apart. Super easy. All right, so we got those two screws out, but notice that the diff still won't come apart. We actually have to remove these parts of the drive shafts here, which is kind of a pain. There's a little Allen head screw in the middle there that we have to stick our driver down and turn out. This can be a little tricky, and it really does help to have a driver as opposed to an Allen wrench, because unless you have an Allen wrench that has a pretty long arm on it, it's going to be a pain in the butt. Now we should be able to split the diff. Boom! And there it is. There is the other half of our broken input shaft. And you can see there's a little cutout here where the bearings actually ride. Boom. And the bearings will ride right there. And we're going to reassemble it like that. Now I'm going to reattach our drive shafts. And boom, there is our rear differential ready to put back into the truck. But before we do that, I'm actually going to add a little bit more grease. One, because this didn't have a whole heck of a lot of grease in it from the factory, and two, I'm gonna put some marine grease in here just to help waterproof it. I run this thing in the snow and the mud and the rain and all kinds of weather conditions, so all the moisture that we can keep out of the diff is gonna be for the better. And remember, the biggest enemy when it comes to diffs is usually heat. So if you can help keep things lubricated, it will reduce the friction and therefore reduce the heat, keeping your diff lasting longer. All right, so before I close that up, I'm just gonna take a little bit of marine grease, and I got this from AutoZone. It was only a few bucks, and you know, this amount of grease is gonna last you just years and years and years and years. So we're just gonna put a little dollop in there, just a dabble do ya. We don't need a whole heck of a lot. Just to replace what we took out by fiddling around with the diff and adding just a little bit more to make sure that it is good and thoroughly greased. So now is the time that we get to put the rear back together, and then we're gonna do the same thing to the front. So now I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the motor. Now we need to make sure that the output shaft splines on the transmission match the splines on the input shaft for the differential. So if we need to adjust it a little bit, we can just grab right here, spin the motor a little bit, spin the transmission a little bit to make sure that that re-engages. And to put in the motor, we just use these little feet on the bottom of the motor mount, and then it's got corresponding slots here in the chassis. We're just going to slide it in, and there, we're lined up. Boom! Now the front, as I said, is pretty much exactly the same. It's a little bit more tedious just because you've got steering linkage and such in the way, but overall, exact same process. I'm not going to bore you with that. Alright, I just got the front input shaft out, and there you can see the difference between the metal and the plastic. These things are trash, you're good to bash. Let's get it reinstalled. And boom, there it is, guys, all put back together. Metal input shafts, front and back. Now, if you convert your Arrma Mega vehicle to brushless and you don't do this mod or this upgrade, trust me, it's only a matter of time. Pretty much all my Arrma Mega vehicles that I didn't do this to, I've broken the input shafts. So as you can see, I've got different wheels and tires on it. These are the Proline trenchers that were on it, and these things, they were too big for the thing. So I put these, which are actually from my JLB Cheetah. I dismantled that thing and salvaged all the parts, and it is still giving up the goods to help the old Graven cast here. So now that we got it all put back together, it's time to take it out and go bash it. That's going to be in a video coming up real soon, guys. So if this is your first time checking out the channel, welcome. I'm glad you found it. I like to do RC shenanigans like this all the time. And if you want to help support the channel, check out 10thskillgarage.com. Pick up a t-shirt, pick up a sticker. All the proceeds go right back into the channel. And if you want to see this thing in action, check out the link somewhere floating around. And check out my Bashers playlist where I run all kinds of good stuff and go outside and actually have fun instead of wrenching on stuff. Alright guys, we'll see you next time. Peace.